Hi there, happy Hum Day and welcome to Wednesday. I hope wherever you are having an amazing week. Difficult people. They come in all shapes and sizes, and in the work environment, there is no doubt you will always come across someone that you find hard to work with. You might label them the problem child. You might label them difficult. Now, if they're a colleague, you may actively seek to avoid spending time with them, working with them. You might try and make sure you don't get assigned to the same projects that they're on. Same too if you're their team leader. You may actively find ways to not spend adequate time with them. The first step, however, in building a great relationship with people that you find difficult is to actually do the opposite. It's to spend more time with them. Now, that might sound counterintuitive, but the reason is, part of the reason why you find them difficult to work with and frustrating is often because you don't know them in a way that has depth and meaning. They perhaps see the world very differently to you. They have different assumptions and different expectations. And what you want to be able to do is understand them and understand where they come from. Now, I always remember the suggestion from Stephen Covey, who wrote The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, who said, seek first to understand, then to be understood. And in this context, that suggestion is absolutely perfect because we all interpret the world through our own lens, our own experiences. But that interpretation is just that. It's an interpretation. It doesn't make it fact. And so it's very easy to misinterpret the actions of people around us, particularly if we've already labeled them as difficult and hard to work with. We think we know what they're thinking. We think we can label who they are and that we can explain their behavior. And more often than not, we can't. So when you're working with someone who is difficult, and that's your interpretation, there's a couple of things that can really help. Firstly, you need to listen first, talk later. And what I mean by that is you really need to understand where they're coming from. And one of the best ways to build relationships is for a person to feel valued, to feel like they have been fully heard. Because when someone doesn't feel valued, when they don't feel heard, it's more likely that they'll not cause trouble, but they'll do something that enables them to then feel heard and feel valued. And that can come across in a way that's not, for you, seen as helpful. In contrast, when you really listen, deeply listen to someone, when they feel heard, when they feel valued, that's building connection and it's building the relationships that you have with them. Secondly, challenge your reaction. Because when you're frustrated, when you're annoyed with someone, it's easy for those frustrations to rise to the surface, to cloud how you see every element of what they do. And that reactive response is often not done from the wisest of places. So when you're doing it with a considered response, you're really sifting through, how am I feeling? What am I reacting to? Why am I reacting? Now, this isn't about ignoring how you feel, because your feelings are real, but it's also actually making sense of those feelings and acknowledging them, working through the frustration, working through where it all comes from. And then deciding, consciously deciding, what it is you want to do with all of that. So there's some questions that can really help. So you need a bit of time to be able to do this because listening takes time. Really being empathetic, enabling the other person to feel heard takes time. And also you need time and space to reflect and challenge yourself. But here are some questions. So when you're in a situation, you're finding something really difficult, you're finding the person in front of you difficult, and you're not quite sure where they're coming from. Notice how you're reacting and ask yourself, why am I feeling like that? What's the meaning that I'm putting on what's going on and what the other person is saying? Now that's my meaning, but what's the alternate? What else could it mean? What's the interpretation I'm putting on their behavior and what other perspectives actually exist? If I'm thinking about responding and responding from a wise place, what would that look like? What are some alternate suggestions and alternate ways to respond to what's going on? Are my expectations of the person realistic? Or are they based on some preconceived ideas and assumptions that are unfair? How would they assess your own behaviour and your intent? Perhaps the way they're viewing you is impacting how your relationship is playing out. Now, when you step into challenging relationships and really spend time working through what's going on, often you're pleasantly surprised that there's far more in there that can be really healthy and really constructive. It was the American author Donald Miller who once said, when you stop expecting people to be perfect, you can just like them for who they are. It's good advice. No one's perfect, including you, including me.